Hey members, welcome back. Okay, tiny channel set this time. Let's see, what happened here with my camera. All right, so I've got 4 pieces of copper square wire, 22 gauge. They're all cut to 8 inches long. So that's 4 pieces, 8 inches long, 22 gauge square soft copper wire. And I've got the same 3 feet of 28 gauge round weaving wire, and I just have it draped to my side here. I'm not going to bend these wires this time. Last time we used round. This time I'm going to use square. And I'm going to capture a few of these little gemstones so that you can see how the tiny ones are set into this channel. And it's pretty much the same as we've been working, but this time we just go smaller stones. So let me get these pulled out. I'm probably not going to use that green one, but I'll just do 4 little ones here. The green one's glass. Maybe it's slightly bigger. Maybe I'll put it in the middle and we'll just do it like that. We'll see. We'll see how we get along. So if this were just going to be a straight bar that I want to add to a frame for a pendant, you know, along a bigger stone, there's kind of 2 schools of thought about, you know, if I need to bend this channel, do I bend it and then insert the stones as I'm creating it, or do I make it straight and then kind of curve it as you go? And I think the answer to that is probably, you know, dependent upon how much bend you want. If you're trying to make a soft curve, you could probably go straight and then curve it. That's what I did with the big giant ruby with the little ruby accents on the side. If you were going to make, you know, something real curvy, probably best, I'm guessing, to curve this wire first into shape or as you go to set the gemstones, just so that you're making sure your gems are set where you want them versus landing on the hard, on the you know, very sharp curve. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. For this one, easy peasy. We're just going to go straight, and it's just for practice so that you can start setting some small gemstones. And I've got 4 of them here. You can put a little tape if you want to help you hold them. I'm just holding them. And we're going to do the same weave we did yesterday. We're going to do the exact same thing we did yesterday, but only 4 little wires today and square. So I'll trap an inch. I'll move up. It's a 1/1 weave. I'm going to make sure that I stay a little air pocket in between these squares. So this first one, I have to, you know, I kind of like to boss the wire and pull it tight to get that air pocket right where I want it. And then the rest of it, once you get the first row or 2, will just be easy to manage. Just keep your square wires square. I pre-straightened them like we do with nylon jaw. And I'm not mangling the wire behind my hand. So I'm at the top. I'm going to come back down. Square wire is the same as working with round, with the exception of just keeping it square. And that's pretty easy once you get the warps out from the spool. It takes a minute to straighten the wire, but it actually works to your benefit as you work and weave especially. So I'm going to make the same 6 or 7 rows here that we made in the last one. I should say columns. And I'm just pushing them back against themselves as I go. These patterns can be anything you want them to, but for this one, since we're trapping gemstones, I find this 1/1 to be the best one to use if you're going to weave. But I don't do a lot of channel sets, so you know, I always recommend that you guys take a look through all of the talent in YouTube, because there's a lot of teachers who are generous also to give their version of channel sets, and there's other ways to do it. This one I do a lot, if I do them at all, because it bends. It bends well, and I usually weave rather than coil, so it just is a natural flow into the rest of my pendant since I'm weaving anyway. So I have about 5 or 6 rows here. I've got my long wire ended on the bottom, and I'm just going to lift these 2 center wires with my fingers, just like that, and just keep them square. And here I'm going to make 1 loop, 1 wrap to get into my space. And now I'm going to change my weave, remember, to figure 8s, and I'm going to keep these 2 rails as consistent as I can. There are little tricks with doing beads that you can string onto here, but sometimes that might be dependent on the bead you got, the hole size, and then the wire size. So if you're having trouble, remember the grid paper. You can always come down to grid paper or your cry-cut board, my cry-cut board underneath here, and just, you know, keep your 2 rails aligned. Grid paper is probably better for small ones like this guy. Okay? If you need to just keep your position. So since I talked all through it yesterday, I'm just going to weave my figure 8s. My gemstones are about 2 and 3 millimeter round, so I don't need that big of a seat down here for them. All of these little gemstones have a tiny point on the bottom of them, which, you know, also for this particular weaved channel, it's good because the little point can catch into the figure 8s here and sit nicely for you while you're muscling these 2 rails down. Okay, so let me see what I got. I don't know how many I did. Maybe I'll have to go back and count. And I'm going to bring my wire back down to position. If I had been focused, ideally you might count these so that you have a consistent set of channels here. Okay, so I'll grab my first one. I've got my 2 wires at 90 degree. And here goes the big challenge. Get your gemstone in there with the point down and the face up and centered to boot. So I'll try to get close now without dropping my gem because I'm far away. Oh, I should have a felt pad underneath me too. So I'm just holding it there with my thumb, oof, with the point down. And these are so little, I'm just going to push. Okay. And guide them down to the center. And it might be that the gemstone slips. Oof. If it slips too much, like mine is doing because I'm in the air and I'm just really afraid I'm going to drop it, you can get your little round nose pliers out and make a pre-bend on these wires. So just a tiny little bend like we did last time. Let me get these back up to 90. Get my weave settled back. Just going to put it right here. Remember that these are tapered, so the wire on my right is going to have a bigger loop than the one on the left. So you just go back to the other side and make sure that, you know, they're similar. Okay, and that might help you get over this gemstone. This is the other thing that your little bent nose are really good for, that I use them for a lot. I was trying to do it with my fingers, but take your little bent nose and grab your gemstone delicately, get it situated in there. So I don't know if you guys read my comment to Yvonne when she said that her gemstones, she drops them a lot too. And I said we should all be on a felt pad when we do this, so if we do drop them, they don't bounce off to the floor. Woo! Let me not talk for 10 seconds here and see if I can get these. So I've got my rails coming back down. Just going to push and get these 4 wires back together. It's okay if one turns on tips. And this might bend, so get that back together. Don't worry about parting them until later. Just make sure that your gemstone, you see how it's sitting in there? Point down and face up. It's not slanted. It's a little bit of a trick, but that's why I say if you take a dive into this weave with that point, it'll help you out. Ooh, okay, there we go. Remember to hold on to it. It's not in there yet. All that work would be for nothing if you let go right now. So I'm just going to use my fingernails and make sure that my little gap is close. I'm going to keep my finger on top of the gemstone, the thumb, until I get this first weave in here and lock the wires down. So right back over wire number 1, up and completely around wire number 2, up and completely around wire number 3, up and completely around wire number 4. Come back down. Try to keep the wires square. If they're turning tips, just don't panic. Get these 2 weaves set. And then we'll get it under control. Okay, so I've got my gemstone locked in there because I finished my little weave there. I could have probably made a few more of these in the back. I get impatient sometimes with the figure eights, but you just have a little separation, you see, if you don't have them, you know, all back, but that's okay. Still cute. So once you get a couple of stitches in there, you know, then you can start pressing if you need to. Don't take the gemstone out of position. And then also if we want to, and I generally do this later, but you see we can do the slightest parting. Don't flinch, because if you go too much, you pop it out. So we've got it set. It's important that this bar stays straight, so that you know you don't have floppy. You have the proper tension is what you need here. Okay, so you keep the main frame bars straight as you work. So I'll make a few more weaves and then repeat that whole unnerving process of catching the gemstone. So I'll come here and do my quick weaves. If I wanted to do something cute in between these, you know, set a bead or anything like that, a tiny 1mm, you could do something like that too, just to make it super spectacular. We're going to keep this one simple, but I'm trying to give you some ideas. I might show you that on another one. It's kind of fun to feed tiny little beads into these spaces too. So So once I get a few more rows, I'll get my nylon jaw, tap everything nice. I could have tapped this side earlier probably. Keep all your weave nice and even. I'm going to do a few more. Just work with nice even tension on your wires. That's about right. Or at least I'll say it is. Alright, and now repeat. Lift the two inside wires, keep them nice and square. Take them up 90 degrees. Okay, just like that. Change your weave pattern to figure 8. And you can turn this way if it makes it a little easier for you to see what you're weaving. It won't really matter from which direction you do this figure 8, so however you can hold it comfortably. And remember, I'm under the camera, so I'm at the slightest odd angle here. You guys are more, at your body with this and closer, so your arms are not outstretched here. Just make sure that the pass across these two wires is nice and the tension is nice and even. You're not really pulling hard right here, you're just more making a nice stretch. Trying to keep them the same distance apart. I've got 3 feet of wire, so I'm trying to make sure my pliers don't get into them as I weave. This length travels up, and so sometimes your pliers and other stuff gets in the way. Kitty cats. I don't have kittens anymore, but they like this dangling wire. And my puppy Jolene has no interest because she's never allowed in here. Alright, so let me go the next one. Oh, I forgot to make my little turns. So let me do that. Just get in here and start making a little bend down. Then I always like to just tap this side and make sure they're even. Come the same distance inside the plier. Get your next one. And yes, you almost have to whisper when you're working with these small gemstones. Let me get my messy felt pad back in here, because I'm certain that these eventually are just going to take a tumble off the table. This little tray here is called a bead buddy. B-E-A-D, buddy. And you can get them at, sewing stores, beading stores, Hobby Lobbies, probably Amazon. And they come in 2 pieces, so it's a case. I carry finished jewelry in here when I'm traveling. Okay, Okay, so I've got my gemstone in there, I think. Put these 2 wires back to the center. Let them come through the middle. Make sure you're on top of your gemstone there, and it's underneath your rails, and then just push these 2 in. See, I'm just giving it with my thumb and bracing against my finger here. It's not a hard, you're not struggling, you're just denting these 2 inside wires here on the other side of your gemstone. Okay, just like that. Let's part them a little bit while they're here. I got my finger and thumb here so that my gem doesn't slip out the sides, but I've got it in the weave. And again, we can part those a little bit later also, or you can do it now if you feel like you want to. I kind of like to lock them in while I'm here, however I get them. And then I can go back and part them. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and keep weaving. I got my finger on top of the gem. I'm going to go up a couple this time. And fully go around wire number 2. Do a complete 360 around wire number 3. Do a complete 360 around wire number 4. And then come back down the stack. You can even them out when you get them stitched in. Mine are a little slanted right now, and that's okay. So I've got 2 nice solid rows. I'm gonna get my nylon jaw, give a little tap. You can use the nylon jaw to help you scooch back as well. I think I'm good. So I'm just gonna do a little push, do a little jiggle, get them all aligned. And then right here, with the slightest outward pressure, I'm just going to part those wires a little bit. Push down and make sure that, you've got no bubbles and everything is riding forward. Okay? Alright, so that's 2 of them. I'm going to put this on hold because, of course, Jolene needs me. Okay, so while you weren't looking, I did a 3rd one. It's a little bit crooked. It's okay. Once it gets into the frame of your piece, you won't even notice. Mine's slightly off there, and that's okay. Don't fret yourself. What I want you to notice is that I slipped a little bead in here, 1 millimeter. And I'll put one over here too. So I weaved my 5 or 6, I think it was, and then on the 7th pass up, I inserted a 1 millimeter in between the 2 center wires and then made 2 additional columns of weave and then pulled my rails up for my gemstone. Inserted my gemstone after my figure 8 weave, landed the wires, and then did 2 rows on this side of the gemstone just like this side. Now I'll add the bead on this side. So I've gone up, I've gone back, just like we've done, and now I want my little bead in between the 2 center ones. So I'm going to position my wire by going up and doing my 360 around my middle one. I'm staying within pattern, nothing changed. But right here, instead of just jumping over and grabbing the next frame wire, I'm going to insert the little bead. Get my little bead. So I'll put my little 1 millimeter on. I'll let it land all the way down, and I'll stay right within pattern. I'm going to jump on top of frame wire number 3, make sure that there's no bubble in my wire. I'm going to do a complete 360 around number 3, jump up to number 4, do a 360 around it, scooch all my wires, and just stay in pattern. So now we've got a bead to either side of my center gemstone. Okay, so cute. We could have also slipped the bead, if we had a big enough hole, directly onto one of these, you know, but I've got 4 wires here, so to tie on is not a bad idea either. You can do it both ways. Just want you to see that. So that's kind of unique and fun. You can do a little bit of that, and that could have been a tiny 1mm gemstone bead too, if I wanted to accent with a gemstone. And now I'll make my 5 or 6 weaved rows and go straight back into reverse pattern. You know, just doing the same on this side. Okay, so I'll weave. And again, I'm a little stiff on the weave here because I'm under the camera. You'd be doing more of like a knitting action with your hands. You know, a soft cradling back and forth to get at these wires a little easier. I'm trying to stay in your view. So I've done a few, I've pushed them back, and just like the other side, just tap them down with your nylon jaw. If you need to get into places like here, you want to re-tap, just get a narrow flat and do gentle tapping. Don't crush your weave with the metal plier. Okay. I've got a few more rows to go and 2 more gemstones. So you've got the idea of how we set some little ones up into a straight bar. And yeah, I can take this and do a little pendant or a little bracelet just like we did with yesterday's. But if I intend to add this to something, then I would just get my gems on here and then leave the bare wire so that you can tie onto a frame. You know, leave the rest of this bare so that you have options to tie onto a frame. Okay, so I've got a few more weaves. It looks about even with the other side. I'm going to come back down, and then I'm going to set my next gem. I'm going to tap everything so my square wires stay square. Lift my 2 center rails and repeat with figure 8. Alright, I went off camera and just sped things up a little bit and put my other ones in here and just continued my pattern. So a few weaves, lift the bars, do figure 8s, put your gemstone, drop the bars, get them close, and then do a few weaves, raise the bars, do figure 8s, drop your gemstone. I had to add a little wire right here because I didn't quite make all the distance, so I've got another foot. And I'm just going to end this bar with the same amount of wraps as my opposite side that I started with. And I'm going a little bit quick, a little bit fast with these weaves, but you could certainly go a little slower and be a little neater than I'm being here too. And then this would be set up for you to add to a pendant frame, or, whoop, I just missed my weave. No, I didn't. Or do something similar like what we did yesterday and create something from this. So let me show you. If you're going, because we used smaller wire here today, and after you get everything weaved, it should be pretty rigid. I'm just going to cut these tails off scrape my cuts into the weave down here. And give all this a little tap. Okay, so there's the entire bar. And now if I wanted to use this, say, for a bracelet bar, which would be very pretty, I would probably do something more to these sides. There's enough open space that you could weave on, you know, just tie on another big wire, or you could tie on, like we talked about, if you used ball chain. You know, you could weave a rail of ball chain next to there. This is just if you're going to use it just as it is without, you know, anything else. And if you're going to use it for something like this, you want to just probably finish the sides a little bit more than this. And that's why I showed you six wires yesterday, so you could have 2 outside 18 gauges here even. If you didn't want them weaved, you just add them afterwards and stitch them in a couple of spots, or add in something like your chain. Or you leave it like this for us to add on, and I'm just going to quickly snip these off. You leave it like this so that we can add on to a frame. And then if we need to bend it, you know, this bar should be easy to bend. I forgot to say, the last thing I would do, you've seen me separate these as we've been going, I would probably actually, you know, do all of the separations at the end. So once everything's all nice and secure, you can go back through and very gently and delicately give just a little outside spread to these rails, real gently, so that you don't pull them so far apart your gemstones fall out. But there you go. And if we want to bend it, you know, we always support the middle. You're always with a finger on top of your gems or at their sides, right? And there's limited, you know, bending here. Like I said, if we wanted to just curve around something nice. But if I wanted to make nice deep bends, then I would have probably pre-bent this wire and then drop my gemstones in using the same weaving technique. Okay, you guys, so there goes this one. I hope you've enjoyed that. And again, this is practice. Your focus is on, you know, getting a nice secure capture on these gems, making sure that your weave is nice and sound, and then you can leave straight wires to tie on. Okay, I will see you soon again.